Hi, I'm Tom Zimmerman from the EMDR podcast. This episode focuses on what flash-like approaches can teach us about how we heal. I have been an EMDR therapist for a while now. I've seen many thousands of reprocessing sessions. I would guess somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 reprocessing sessions. And what that means is I've had a front row seat to deep and astonishing change, often session after session after session. And what I've seen is clients really astonish themselves with healing using this pathway, which apparently has always been with us, this pathway built around activation, noticing, and left-right stimulation that really does produce transformational change. And that's what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is an approach to psychotherapy that completely changes your relationship with an experience in a session or two. So all of the EMDR sessions that I've seen have been fascinating, compelling, unique, beautiful, and somehow often the same. And I know that's a bundle of contradictions, but if you do trauma work, that's likely, and you do sessions in which you observe transformational change, you're going to see a lot of different stuff. And in some ways, it's the same pathway. It's a very similar process. And when the client is on that pathway, things are moving pretty reliably, predictably, in a good and adaptive direction. In the last year, I've also started doing flash-like approaches with my clients. And what that has done, I've also seen, flash produce with great predictability, absolutely astonishing, rapid transformational change. Flash gets there. It gets clients there every bit as predictably, perhaps more predictably than EMDR does. So what that means is I have two now very different perspectives on what healing looks like. And I get to see that pretty up close. I get to see this remarkable set of processes that people have, that humans have, that we've presumably always had of healing. I get to see that up close, and I get to see that from multiple perspectives. But really quickly, if you've done Flash or you're somewhat familiar with it, and you're not seeing your clients completely and permanently heal, my suggestion is you may not be doing it optimally. And again, it makes sense that you may not be doing it optimally because I think it's kind of hard from this perspective to even say exactly what Flash is, because it's changed so many times, and it's going under pretty regular change. So I'm probably going to need to clarify a little bit about what Flash is. We generally understand what EMDR is, but in a minute I'm going to have to explain, I think, a little bit about what Flash is, so you know what the heck I'm talking about and which versions I'm talking about. But so there's something about having two different perspectives to see something. And it can let you see something clearly. One of the things it may let you do is it may let you see, if you're watching a process, and that, two different processes are getting you to a very similar place, it may be an opportunity to see, how much of this journey is a product of a particular perspective and how much may be the product simply of what healing looks like in the human mind and human experience. So with transformational change, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to talk about it in abstract. We should probably talk about exactly what we're transforming. And in a lot of ways, what we're transforming is trauma, but to be even more specific, what we're transforming is learning, and deeply emotional learning that is stored typically in the limbic brain in packets of implicit information. So I'm going to slow down a little bit and explain what I mean by that. So we know, obviously, that memories are stored. They're stored. We understand that they're stored. Different parts of it are stored in different parts of the brain. We, as a shortcut, say that memories are stored in the limbic brain, and in that chunk of implicit information, if we kind of unzip it and look at it, there's the memory. There's the raw sensory information of that experience. Okay. Now, around that, encapsulated in that, there's also the aspect, the world view, the perspective with which that memory is viewed. They're the affects, the kind of packaged up part of what that memory is, or the kinds of things you felt. And their perspectives from the self system at the time that the trauma happened. So again, if you think about, a really embarrassing memory that may have happened in third grade, when you play that memory and you look up, the teacher's up, the other kids, when we have memory, it tends to be stored in these chunks in very, very, very state-specific ways. And state-specific meaning at the time that the trauma happened. Also, in this compressed zip file, there may be beliefs, there may be schemas, there may be, and schemas if they can be negative beliefs about the self, they can be negative cognitions about the self or the world or the self in the world. And obviously, these things that are in this kind of compressed packet of information, which we can kind of think of as a memory, as a script, as something that when it gets activated, it very often may cause a catastrophe in the present. It may cause, that's what trauma is. When trauma gets activated, when trauma gets unzipped and gets brought into awareness and into focus. So again, what we're transforming is deeply emotional learning that has cognitive components. It has, in a lot of ways, that memory is kind of out of space-time because it's not right here, right now, although it can cause a catastrophe right here, right now. So the argument I'm making is that EMDR transforms all aspects of that memory, including beliefs about the self and the world that memory it has informed. Flash does the same thing. So if you don't really believe that yet, that's okay. That's been my experience. And I know in many, many Flash-like approaches, we do not ask about cognitions. I've been asking about cognitions from the very first time I did my very first Flash session. I've been asking about what is it that is there something you believe about yourself or the world that's a little bit easier to believe now than you did 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago or however long we started working on that memory. And as we know, if you're an EMDR therapist, these are part of the metrics that guide how we know and how we become aware of whether the client is done with that memory. So they can not just play that memory and the body's okay, but we want to check and make sure that beliefs about the self and the world have also shifted accordingly. So let's talk a tiny bit about what some of the core elements of EMDR are. Because again, I want to define this position, this perspective. I want to define this position, this perspective. So in a lot of ways, what EMDR is, very, very simply, is activating a memory. And that activation is pretty direct. We're going to, at the standard protocol, we're going to shine our little laser beam on exactly that individual memory. And we're going to make sure we activate it because we're going to go into that memory at the worst part. So, EMDR really does want to kind of set that memory on fire. And we're going to go in at the worst part. Most of the session is spent noticing. We're noticing what's coming up as a result of that activation. And we're doing this while the brain gets a left-right stimulation. So this bilateral stimulation is a key part of the EMDR process. Activate, notice, left-right stimulation. So if we think about that being what EMDR is, and that process can put the client on a path that can produce deep and astonishing change, let's compare that with what Flash is. So I'm going to kind of define some features of what I mean by Flash, because again, Flash in a year, the way it's defined by its developer may not be at all what I'm defining, where I'm kind of putting my stakes down. So characteristics of Flash, the way I use it, are very, very light activation. That memory does need to be highlighted. It does need to be selected. It does need to be activated a tiny, tiny bit. But in Flash approaches, we're very, very careful not to set that memory on fire. We're very, very careful to lightly activate that memory. Then we really quickly pivot to a pleasant scene or a pleasant process or a resource or something that can give our attention, that gets our attention and focus. And then we disrupt. We do things that disrupt our ability to remain focused on that scene, and we go right back in it. So another way of saying all that is we lightly activate the memory, we load up a calm scene, right? And then we do blinks, which interrupt our capacity to stay focused on that calm scene. So in a lot of ways, that's the way I kind of define what Flash is. Light activation, calm scene, disrupt that calm scene. And if this sounds strange, if it sounds like, light activation, notice something calming, and disrupting your ability to stay focused on whatever it is you're noticing, if that sounds strange, I'm going to make the point that this is absolutely central in almost every psychotherapy that is transformative. If you're aware of psychotherapies that don't involve, that are transformative, that do produce predictably, reliably, session after session after session, typically clearing one target, one memory, one issue every session. If you're aware of psychotherapies that do this, that don't involve these qualities, let me know, because I'd really, really be interested. So what Flash is, and I'm going to argue what EMDR is as well, is they're very explicitly memory reconsolidation approaches. And what a memory reconsolidation approach is activating a memory and encouraging or promoting the client to have an experience that challenges the prediction that is in that challenges. If we unzip that file, there is information there, and there is information about what's going to happen. You're not going to be heard. You're not going to feel safe. You are not safe right now. Something bad is about to happen. You're about to be judged. And what we do is we activate and then we present information that challenges that. Okay. We can talk, and I've talked in other places about how EMDR does that. EMDR on the most fundamental level, what we're noticing is distress. That is true. And on the surface, that may seem to challenge. What I'm saying is that we need to be noticing things that challenge what's in that memory. But what we're noticing is distress. But what we're also noticing is look at you right here, right now, and the bad memory's not happening. Look at you right here, right now. Nobody's judging you. You're tolerating this. You're digesting this experience. a little bit at a time. So look at you handling this. So in Flash, Flash is pretty explicitly a memory reconsolidation approach, the way I've defined it. Light activation, calm scene, and going in and out of that calm scene, directing attention in and out of that calm scene. What is remarkable about Flash is the speed. Even among memory reconsolidation approaches, the speed at which clients can process existentially horrible memories with a Flash-like approach, when you do it well, is simply staggering, even among memory reconsolidation approaches. Why? Okay, I have some ideas about that, and I have ideas about that that come from these multiple perspectives. So again, activation in Flash, and that activation needs to be very, very light, okay, in Flash. Because why? Because what happens if it's not light, that trauma seeps out, it catches fire, it starts to cause a catastrophe in the body, which causes a lot of other implicit chunks of information to have some pretty strong opinions about that. And basically, it causes too much activation, causes a lot of defensive processes that are designed for protection to come in, and they can hijack the process. So again, light activation, what we've learned, what Flash can teach us, is that very, very light activation is enough. Very light activation is enough to highlight a memory and bring that memory into working memory, but not to kick off a catastrophe in the mind and body. Okay, so the calm scene, again, light activation, calm scene. This is the core of what memory reconsolidation is. Okay, light activation, calm scene that challenges the expectation in that memory, challenges the negative cognition in that memory. Look at you doing something pleasant. Look at you imagining making a ham and cheese sandwich. Look at you doing something relaxing while that memory is in working memory. What is happening, or seems to be happening in Flash, is that when we do the blinks, we are pivoting very quickly from that calm scene into the present, right? Our attention is going here. And why is our attention going here? Because in order to blink, we have to be present, right? And the therapist is going, blink, right? And you have to be present in order to blink. Are there other things you can do other than blinking? Absolutely. You can do this, right? You can tap on your legs. You can do any kind of behavior that shifts your focus from that calm scene into the present for just a moment. Anything. You can either, even if you want, you can stare deeply at a dot on the wall for a moment. You can stare deeply at something that's not in your calm scene, but we need to, again, calm scene, focus away, and then go right back into the calm scene. This pendulation, right? So again, what we're talking about that is really remarkable and really transformative in Flash is activation. And in my version of it, it's activation container, activation and container, and then calm scene. Activation, activation container, calm scene. And we do this, and then this is our seesaw. And at the end of this noticing end of the seesaw, we have another seesaw that's going like this, right? And what that is going in and out of the calm scene. So almost anything can be that calm scene. So I'm hoping you're starting to see why I am so incredibly excited about how Flash-like approaches really do magnify and really do accelerate what is incredibly awesome about memory reconsolidation approaches. So all that Flash can really clearly teach us is that when you activate a memory, you bring up something that challenges that memory. If you go in and out of that, if you go in and out of that calm scene, in and out of that process, it can really speed up the process of healing. So what does this mean? What does it mean from a practical perspective? What this means is that activation, resource, and then pendulating in and out of that resource can turn almost any resource into an approach that can produce deep and astonishing healing. I'm going to say that again. Activating, ideally, lightly activating, and reactivating and reactivating, and calm scene is calm scene, calm process. You know what Manfield calls positive engaging focus. You know, something that you're focusing on that gets your attention, and then disrupting your ability to stay focused on that process. That simple dynamic can turn any resource into a psychotherapy, into an approach to healing that can resolve absolutely awful memories. So I guess my question is, how are you going to fiddle with this? How are you going to do this and turn your dancing mindfulness into a means to completely and adaptively process trauma in 15 minutes, in 20 minutes? How are you going to turn your yoga practice? How are you going to turn your meditative practice? How are you going to turn your, I mean, my preferred place to make my own psychotherapy is warm bath therapy. I do Flash a lot, these Flash-like approaches a lot in the bathtub. I'm literally embodied in my calm scene. I do my blinks. I lightly activate whatever the stressors are for the day. I notice the current somatic state that I'm in. I do my blinks, disrupt that, go back into the calm somatic state that I'm in. And so I guess what I'm saying is, who knew that in a lot of ways, we can, with this understanding of memory reconsolidation, which comes out of, lab neuroscience research, we can transform resources into deep, astonishing, transformational healing processes. And if that isn't a world-changing bit of information, I don't know what is. So my commitment is that if you simply don't believe, right, you don't understand memory reconsolidation, be in touch. I want to help you. I want to help you understand it. If you simply say, look, Tom, I've tried Flash. It can kind of take some heat out of the memory, but I'm just not seeing what you're talking about. Be in touch. You're probably doing it not quite optimally. And it makes sense. There are ways to do this optimally, right? And they're incredibly simple. So this is only a few very, very simple things can transform the most awful things humans experience. So thanks.